Senator Rand Paul, the libertarian from my former home state of Kentucky, made some interesting comments yesterday, basically saying that his Republican colleagues should apologize to Obama for complaining about the spending that he undertook during his administration. Let's take a listen.
You know, it's funny that people say, well, Washington, Republicans and Democrats never compromise and can't get along. That's actually the opposite of truth. Republicans and Democrats compromise every day of the year to spend money we don't have. So we were already running $1 trillion short just with our normal budgetary expenses for the year. We added $3 trillion. Now they're talking about another $1 to $2 trillion. We're going to borrow $5 trillion in 5 months. I remember when conservatives complained about George W. Bush borrowing $5 trillion in 8 years. We're going to borrow $5 trillion in 5 months. Look at gold. Gold's over $2,000 an ounce. People are worried. The politicians around here say, oh, no, we just have to buy more voters by flooding the economy with money. Well, guess what? What if conservatives or libertarians that vote Republican decide the hell with it? You're acting like Democrats. We're either staying home or voting for a third party. You know what? They might just lose this election because they're acting like Democrats now. And so I'm very upset with my colleagues. They went 8 years. They should apologize now to President Obama for complaining that he was spending and borrowing too much. He was a piker compared to their borrowing that they're doing now. So, yes, these Republicans, they should have to apologize, and they should by law be forbidden from ever saying that they're fiscally conservative.
So let me give him credit. He is consistent. In my view, he's consistently wrong. He is consistent here. But the idea that Republicans are losing the election because they're spending too much money is completely bananas, especially when you look at, you just look at the polling. 2/3 of the country wants them to extend the $600 unemployment plus up. Everybody basically wants them to go ahead and send out another round of stimulus checks, direct payments. Everybody, basically like 80%, wants state and local aid. So, look, you can have your ideology. You can believe that the government should be small. You could have this and that as your philosophy. But trying to tie it to the election and say, that's the problem that Republicans are having right now is completely bananas.
Well, he's absolutely wrong about the election. And that's completely true, because even it actually makes the point is that there is no appetite for limited government in the Republican Party. And there may never have been. It's something that sounds really good once in a while, particularly when you have a Democrat like Barack Obama in office. It's easy to sort of muster the Tea Party base. But I don't think that's something that, I'm speaking as a conservative. I wish, that was a will that people had. One thing I do think is worth zooming in on that Rand Paul said, really interesting. He said Republicans and Democrats compromise every day on spending. And that is actually a really interesting point, because a lot of this compromise, when people say we need to compromise, we need bipartisanship in Washington, it's cronyism. When you can get Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell to come together on something, well, let's think about what those guys agree on, right? They agree on that kind of thing.
Well,
they agree on cronyism.
They agree on cronyism. They definitely agree on, whenever there's a defense budget, no matter how big, weapons spending, any of that, absolutely bipartisan agreement. I view it very differently, though. To me, what's been so bizarre about watching these Republican negotiations unfold and the complete inability to come to a deal, the foot dragging, the fact that the unemployment benefits have lapsed and the economy is at a standstill and probably in free fall as we speak, with millions of people facing homelessness. It's guys, you're going to lose, and it's because you're not doing anything. People want you to deliver aid. We crafted this system that forced people onto unemployment benefits, and then you're going to pull the net out from under them. It's bananas. And so my view has been they are so stuck on this Reagan-era ideology that they cannot possibly even do what is in their self-interest in this time. And it's really funny because normally you have the Wall Street analysts who are among the crowd that's let's not spend any money. Let's, let's get these deficits and debt under control. Even they are we got to do something here. We're in massive trouble because 70% of the economy is consumer spending. If consumers don't have any money, we are in big trouble. And oh, by the way, when it was Wall Street that needed the bailout, $4 trillion from the Fed, that flows like water. But now suddenly when it's working class people, that's when they are so outraged that anyone would get any more money than they were making prior to the pandemic.
And now I think this gets to part of the problem with Washington, though, which is that it's not just about flooding the economy with money. It's about doing it well. It's about getting money to the people who need it and doing it in an efficient way so that people don't have to wait weeks before their benefits. It lapses, then they wait 2 weeks, and then they get $600 whatever it is.
And it's totally unstable, totally unpredictable. People have no way to plan their lives.
Right. And so it's not even just that, like, I'm not entirely opposed to a big spending package here because it's clearly needed, but it has to be done correctly. And there's no ability in Washington to actually deliver this money or spend this money in an efficient way because they can't come to an agreement on what that would even look like. Like, they can't even get to that first point. And I think that's really the huge problem here.
I mean, at this point, I really think the simplest thing would just be to send everybody money, regular checks every month. That way, look, from a libertarian perspective, you care about small government. That pulls a lot of the bureaucracy out of it. That way, it's just like everybody gets it. It goes out, it's simple, it's straightforward. We did the first direct stimulus checks really easily and really efficiently. There's a plan out right now from Sanders and Kamala Harris and one other person, I can't remember who are saying, like, let's just go forward with $2,000 a month until this is over. Let's actually make it retroactive so that people get arrears so that they can stay in their homes and keep body and soul together. But I thought Senator Sherrod Brown, who's of course, economic populist from Ohio, I thought he put this really well in terms of the way that conservatives are dragging their feet on these provisions that have been so key to working class people. Let's take a listen.
It's pretty unbelievable to hear people on this side of the aisle making $175,000 a year as U.S. senators. Most of my colleagues are millionaires, and they complain that these unemployed workers are getting $600 a week. They complain that these workers are getting too much money as we earn $175,000 a year.
And again, look, you could have crafted a different structure from the beginning that did not force people onto unemployment. But this is what you all unanimously agreed on. And then the Democrats don't get any major praise here either. They've been sort of absent. They're happy to watch the Republicans stumble around and be ridiculous. But the Republicans, the one red line they've put on is their corporate liability shield, to your point about like corruption and priorities.
Although they're backing away from it a little bit now, so we'll see what actually happens with that. But yeah, I mean, I agree. It's like the $600 thing. It's funny because Rand Paul and Sherrod Brown would probably both agree that in Washington, the Democrats and Republicans think $175,000 is not a lot of money, right? Like that's what the establishment politicians would complain about in terms of the $175,000. But yeah, I mean, it's just a really interesting situation right now. There are serious concerns, I think, about people who are getting the money that don't need it. I mean, I personally heard anecdotes about people who are like, they have no need for this money. They're fine. And I wish that money could be funneled to people who actually do need it. But in this situation, it's like, how, when you have this massive pandemic that encompasses the entire country, massive unemployment, I just don't know how you do this with precision.
Right. Well, that's exactly right. And look, the anecdotes come in from business of like, oh, we want to hire people, but we can't find people because they're making too much money on unemployment. But what the research says is, I mean, look, it's not rocket science. There's a pandemic. Businesses have closed. Permanent job loss is accelerating. We've had millions of people for weeks on end, 19 weeks in a row, more than 1 million people filing for unemployment. So whatever the work disincentives are, that is like so beside the point of what the issue is in the economy right now. And the research says, it's just not what's going on. The problem is that there are not enough jobs and we're in the middle of a pandemic. So you've got to help people out one way or another. And I just always find it mind-boggling that, when it's for the Pentagon, when it's for Lockheed Martin, when it's for these people, like there's no problem. No one's complaining about that. But the minute that it's like, oh my God, we might be making life a little bit too easy for the working class, that's when they got to pump the brakes.
And nobody on either side of the aisle, by the way, complains when it's the Pentagon.
No, that is the bipartisan cooperation.
Yeah, that's the cronyism. That's exactly it. It's exactly it. And that's what breaks my heart, by the way, is when you see these long unemployment lines, knowing that there are people who need the money more than some people who are getting it. I just wish there was a more precise way to do that, but I think that's probably impossible.
Yeah, we just got to get through this period, deal with the pandemic, and then we can go from there. All right, we're going to have more Rising for you after this.